Good morning. How are we doing out there? Good to see you. Oh, thumbs up. Thumbs up from the cheap seats back there. That's great. Thank you. I am Dr. Z, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, with Cohesity. I don't want to tell you that we've got a survey going on, and if you give me your survey, we'll give you a $10 Starbucks card, or I might even give you $10 since we're talking about money today. So fill those out if you will. This is exciting for me to be here because I grew up in Houston. I don't live in Houston. I live about as far away from Houston. I live way up in the Pacific Northwest now. But way back in the 60s and 70s, I lived here. I went to Cy-Fair High School. Those of you who know where that's at, out in the Northwest, get a little clap for Cy-Fair. I was a Cy-Fairy. I think that's what we were called. I just know we had the worst football team in the world out there. Our motto was we were lean and mean and 0-13. That was what we did our year. It was pretty bad. But back then, my dad had an interesting business. My dad was a World War II vet who came out of World War II, married my mom, and had no idea what to do, didn't have any education, but he knew how to sell stuff. And pretty soon he started selling, about 10 years after the war, he started selling these things called punch cards that were used for this new thing called computing in the late 1950s. And pretty soon that led him into selling paper that was used for computing. Because back in the early days of computing, if you wanted to get anything out of a computer, you had to put it on a piece of paper, right? There were no monitors. We didn't have desks with monitors on them. We had printers. And so you had to have a lot of paper. And he started a business. He worked for a company out of Chicago, actually here in Houston, and he started selling paper. And during, when I was in high school, in the 70s, I would work during the summer, and I was the delivery boy. And you guys remember, who remembers that 15-inch wide paper that had green bars on it? Remember that stuff? Yeah, come on, we're among friends. You can date yourself. You can date yourself. So who still has some of the 15-inch wide paper with green bars on it? Anybody? No, not yet. Okay. I do. He sold so much of that stuff that in 1972, his salary was $250,000. 50 years ago, okay? Yeah, talk about wow. So we would go to Shell Oil out near Katy every Thursday, and we would take 450 boxes of paper. You know what I remember? It was 50 pounds a box. That's what I remember. Because it was August, and it was 50 pounds a box. 450 pounds. So I started thinking, that's a lot of printing, right? Because every Thursday they would use all that paper. And back in those days, you didn't have fonts. You didn't have perpetual, or, you had one font, basically. And so I thought, thinking, okay, how much data could you get on 450 boxes of paper? So I did a calculation for you. 126 characters on a line, 6 lines per inch on the 15-inch wide paper. Anybody want to take a guess how much data you could get? What do you think? Tell you what, I'm going to come down there with you. It's lonely up here. I'm too far away. It's much more fun to be down here. Okay, what do you think? How much? A floppy disk worth. How much is a floppy disk worth back in the day? 2 megabytes? That's a pretty big floppy disk back then. 2 megabytes? 2 bytes? Is that what I heard? What else? What's your vote?
How tall was the paper? I don't remember. Like you said, how wide?
Oh, yeah, it was about 12 inches or so. 8K. 8K, okay. We're all dancing around it. It actually is almost exactly 1 gigabyte. 50 pounds times 450 is what? 22,500 pounds for 1 gigabyte. Who knew a gigabyte could weigh so much? Did anybody think a gigabyte was 22,500 pounds? That's amazing. I'm holding 128 gigabytes in my hand. Do you know how many pounds that is? If this was paper, that's about 3 million pounds of paper. Isn't that fascinating to what we've come from? But this was the evolution that I grew up with, is dealing with this thing of paper. And now we're moving to the idea of data's everywhere, and it doesn't weigh anything, and now we have access to it. And it's all about what do we do with it. And that's what I want you to think about is, what do you do with this data and how do you treat it? I often ask customers, well, how much of your data do you back up? And then they'll say, well, all of it. And then my next question is what? Why? Right? So let's talk about that. Clive Humby was a mathematician, a British mathematician, and he coined this phrase a few years ago, 2006, data is the new oil. Because the value that it brings to organizations. You see in this cartoon all the big individuals or organizations, that is, that are taking this data out of the ground. But just like oil, here we are in one of the big oil and refinery centers of the world. Can oil by itself be used? Does it have value? What do you have to do to it? Yeah, you have to refine it, right? And data is no different. Data must be refined to have value. It has to be refined when it's gathered. It has to be refined quickly because it has a time value associated with it. It has to be refined completely. You can't leave pieces of it sitting around. It has to be accurate, and most importantly, it has to be connected to other relevant data. This is what has to be, this is what companies are doing. This is what big data is all about. This is what data lakes are about, is the ability to connect this data so that it can bring value to organizations. This is the key. It's what we have to do. Joris Toenders is a writer, an entrepreneur, lives in the Netherlands, and I really like what he said here, that organizations that can learn to extract and use data from their organization, just like oil, extracting it from the ground, they're going to get huge rewards for it. So that's what we have to do. Now, your world, I want you to kind of shift your thinking, because your world has been one of data keepers. You're all about protecting the data. You're all about, put your hands on your head, step away from the data. I've got it. But the world's shifting, and I want you today, here for the next few minutes together, kind of shift your brain a little bit and think differently. Okay? Now, here's another thing that IBM made, a very interesting statement, and here's the 3 things. If you take nothing else away from our time together, it's these 3 things. That their studies show that companies that can do these 3 things are better than their peers. And that is that you are integrating data into the strategy, the operations, and the culture of your organization. If you can do that, then you're better. You're doing better. You're more effective, you're more efficient, you make more money, your products do better than your competitors. So what do I mean about excelling at integrating data? You think about that and you go, well, wait a minute, we have data all over our company. But go back to the very beginning. Are you extracting that data? Are you integrating that data? Are you bringing that to the forefront of the organization? Are you treating it like it's currency? So what can data do for you? Right? If you really are using data, you've got insights. You've got all sorts of things that are going on to understand your customers, your market, your business, all these things. You are creating new products and innovating, improving your services, competitive advantage. Data literally can be bought and sold, and we've seen this over and over. In consulting with organizations, I've seen data being listed on balance sheets, literally listed on a financial balance sheet, listed as an intangible asset. Now think about it. Think about organizations. We talk about ransomware. That's a huge topic today. What happened to MGM and Caesars recently, right? There's a lot of numbers floating around about MGM. Ton of numbers. I heard one, it was $52 billion it cost them. Don't believe that. Okay, that's on the high end. It's like, it's like gymnastics. You throw out the high number and you throw out the low number, and you kind of find somewhere in the middle. But the whole bottom line is, cost them a heck of a lot of money because they were down for quite a long period of time because what? They did not have access to their data. Why did Caesars write a check in one day? Because they wanted their data. The hacker said, $30 million, please. And Caesar said, how about 15? And the hacker said, okay. See, it's all about the data. It's all about the data. So it has that value. Absolutely has that value. And here's what Joris Tunders makes a really good point. It's not just about the fact that there's data. We've all got data. Who feels like you have too much data? Anybody? Yeah. It's like, how did we get all this data? It just kind of crept up on us. All of a sudden, we've got data. Why'd you bring so much data in? You were supposed to keep it out, right? It's not the fact that you have all this data, it's you have microdata. It's the little stuff that provides the value. And to our point before, it's the connected data. It's the fact that that data is connected to the other data. The hip bone's connected to the thigh bone, et cetera, et cetera. That's the key. That's where you get value out of it. Who's heard this term, data democratization? Is this something that you're talking about? Anybody? Okay. Let's define democratization of data. We talk about democracy all the time. You turn the news on and it's democracy. Everything's democratized. Well, this is coming. This is the next step for all of us. Here's the definition of data democratization. Anybody nervous? Yeah, okay. It's the all come, open up the data, come on in. You don't have any knowledge of financial systems, but you can look at the data. Okay? Now, disclaimer, there will always be data that is not open to everybody, for sure. But the act of opening the data does have value. It has a great deal of value. Let's talk about that. What is it? It requires a culture, though. It's not just something of you turn it on and how all of a sudden everybody has access. It's moving from this idea of being a data keeper to being a data citizen. Think about it. You have, as a citizen of the state of Texas, if you live here or you live in the city of Houston, you have responsibilities of being a citizen. You get stuff for being a citizen. You get services. But you have to also comply with certain responsibilities. Take the speed limit. What if we just got rid of all the speed limits because we live in a free society? That's a heck of a good idea, right? No, I don't think so, right? We'd have pretty much chaos. And the same thing is true with this idea. So we have to be, it's a citizenry where everybody has responsibility instead of it's, I've got the data and I can give you a little bit type thing. It's we all have responsibility. But it has come with it is we have to make sure that everyone using it has the right literacy around the data. So there's tools, there's education. to say this is how it works. Think about business intelligence systems that have, in the last 20 to 30 years that we've gone through, that we've opened up the data, right? You have a big data warehouse, then you have a tool people log into, but the tool requires specialization. Certain people to run that tool and create the interface. You hire consultants to twiddle the bits. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about educating so people understand what they're looking at. And it's a process. I just wanted to share that with you because this is something that's on the horizon that we have to be ready for. And this mindset that as an IT and security professionals, we're not the data keepers. We're helping the organization be data citizens. And we think about how do we protect that data, protect the important stuff, but still allow access so that the business can make better decisions, basically. So it's an interesting time. Yes?
I'm sorry, I know you probably want to keep questions to the end,
That's all right.
but doesn't this presuppose that you've launched one of the dirtiest, ugliest projects in corporate America, and that's classification of data?
Well, look at this. Watch. Look at that. Isn't that amazing?
Did I set you up?
You set me up. I'll give you the $20 later. So, and what Jack asked was, doesn't this set up one of the hardest and, to his point, dirtiest processes in all of IT and corporate America, and that's data classification? And the absolute answer to that is yes. So let's look at this way. I got an idea. Who's got a lot of cash on them today? I'm serious. Who's got cash? Anybody? You got 20? Who's got cash? How much you got back there? $100. Who's got cash? Nobody? Nobody carries cash anymore? $40. I guess nobody cash. Well, guess what? Guess who's got cash? I do. Okay, I was ready for this. I asked somebody some of this one time. Guy had $700 in his pocket. So, just for time's sake, and Jack, thank you for setting me up. Here's my point. I've got all sorts of denominations here. I've got some hundreds and 20s and 10s and some ones. Let's say that you're in the car, you're driving along, and you come up to an intersection, and there's somebody holding a cardboard sign asking for some money. Would you hand them a $100 bill? Probably not. Would you give them a 1? Maybe. Okay. Why? You value this very differently than you value that. Your data is no different. But when you back up your data, as I mentioned earlier, what do we tend to do? We take this and we package it all up and we stick it somewhere. And that's the wrong thing to do, because these 100s represent the most expensive, the most critical pieces of data in your business. The stuff that if you were to lose, your business would go under. And maybe it's proprietary, maybe it's, personally identifiable, whatever it is. You can't lose it. And so what you do is you put controls around it. You take that and you stick it where the sun don't shine or whatever, and you put it maybe in a air gap solution, some vaulted situation. You take it somewhere. These 20s, they're important, maybe not quite so important as the 100s. These go in another location, and I'm going to protect these. And I go down the line, right? And these 10s, I figure out the right controls, and I put them over here. And I get down to now I have my 1s, which represent kind of the junk in my organization, right? The stuff that if I lost, wouldn't be a big deal. Maybe I can put this in a cloud resource because I'm scared of the cloud. Cloud is a lot more secure than your place, folks. Probably, okay? But maybe if I lose it, it's not the end of the world. And you know what you could do with this? You could take this stuff and you could throw it away. You can delete it. Don't go jumping for it now. Don't move. Don't move. It's only $3 anyway. Do you know what? Deleting data, very therapeutic, okay? It feels really good, but it's hard to do. It's really hard to push the button. Every data retention policy has a data deletion clause. But we kind of ignore that and sweep it under the rug, right? But if you can call out the stuff that doesn't matter, get it out of your system, and then go back and look at what's left over, you kind of go, oh, wow, hey, this is pretty cool. Oh, yeah, I can handle this. So the idea of classification, and to your point, Jack, it's a messy thing. And I'm not talking about, I'm going to go and I'm going to classify every piece of data that sits in my system. I'm talking about finding the stuff that's most important to you and then putting the right controls around it, the right security controls around the most important stuff. Because when it hits the fan, whatever it is, if it's ransomware, if it's a natural disaster, if it's a well-meaning stupid person doing something, whatever, the most important thing you can do is be ready to recover. You have to be ready to recover. You've got to do tabletops, you have to do experience, you have to plan, you have to be ready. Because what I see time and time again are organizations that say, yes, we have a plan. We have a plan. We wrote out a plan to recover. And I'll say, well, where is that plan? And they say, well, it's on SharePoint, which you're not going to be able to get to when the ransomware guy comes in and encrypts all your data. Have you tested your plan? Well, some of it. This is the most important thing, is that you understand what apps need to come up first and when and how, your point objectives, your time objectives, because it's all about recovery. So if you can classify what needs to come up, where the most important data is, now you're ahead of the game. So that's what I mean by classification. It's the most important thing. So here's reality. You have sensitive access, the stuff that really matters. You've got open access data, you all come, and then you've got junk. And they're all mingled together in reality. They're all sitting on different workloads, and they all kind of merge, right? And where they merge, now you've got problems. And where these red X's represent is bad, 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 and especially, here's my obligatory Venn diagram. That spot in the middle, that's really bad, where they're all intersecting. And so what you want to think about doing as you classify is separating them out as much as possible. So the goal is to minimize or to eliminate this overlap. And so what you can do by classification is I pull out the sensitive data, my open access data comes out, and see what happens to my obsolete data? It shrinks because I'm deduplicating it or I'm eliminating it. And so it's easier to work with. I'm more efficient. That's the goal. That's what we want to try to achieve, is move in this direction. So the value of this, I'm improving my data protection, just as I showed you, right? I'm taking the important stuff, I'm putting it where I know it is, and I know I have the right controls around it. I have reduced the risk of data breaches. Does that mean that because I've done this, I am less likely to suffer a data breach? What does it mean? Less impact, right? Yeah, it means that when it happens, my risk is lowered. Remember that risk is a conversation you have all the time, but there's one other component of risk, and that's probability. We tend to forget about. The city of Los Angeles has a data center. I'll just back up. What's one of the big risks to data center? One thing that data centers do not like is water, right? Would you agree that water and servers do not mix? But what's the probability of water getting into a data center? It's pretty low, right? We build them up. We take measures to protect it from water. Unless you're in the city of Los Angeles that has a data center that lives underneath a municipal swimming pool on the San Andreas Fault. Just saying. That's all they could get. They took it. They accepted that risk. Okay. So, probability. Got to think about that. you're more efficient in allocating resources when you do that. It's easier to comply. The auditor walks in. When the auditor walks in, the first lie you tell the auditor is, "Hi, it's nice to see you." That's the first lie when the auditor walks in. Any auditors in the room? I'm sorry. We can't speak freely anymore, so careful. Shh, shh. Sorry. You can improve in your response, and especially when insurance walks in. Okay, that's a whole other topic. If you want to talk about cyber insurance, see me later. Okay, I want to talk briefly, how are we doing on time? What do we got? Cool. 15? Cool. Data security posture management. You see this statistic that in just a few years, this is going to be in about 20% of organizations. It's an extension of data classification. It's data classification on steroids. And it's something that allows you to take a look at where you're at to make the right decisions, to say, does this workload does it have the controls necessary for me to feel comfortable that things are where they need to be? Am I applying the right resources? So what does it do? It provides visibility for where the sensitive data exists across my environments and my platforms, in the cloud or wherever. See, now we're starting to answer the cloud questions. Who has access to that data? These are the questions we've been asking. You know, we go to the guru. We kneel at the feet of the big cloud guru and we ask these questions all the time. Who's using it? How is it being used? And what are the strengths and vulnerabilities of that data and the applications? Anybody want to know this stuff? Yeah, okay. So these tools are cool. I'll show you. The vendors out there are doing amazing jobs with this. So who's using it? SecOps, risk compliance officers, and DevSecOps. These are the normal places of use, the starting places that can get the answers to say, okay, tell me what's happening, give me that intelligence so I can make the right decisions. Really, really valuable information. And here are the big players in that space. We work very closely with Big ID in our system. As we ingest data in the backup process, it's automatically classified by Big ID. Big ID has over 200 expressions that they use to automatically classify. So if you want to know what's going on, what it is, boom. Worked a lot with them, love their product. It's really, really cool. But these other ones are great products on the DSPM scale, okay? Let's look at just some other things. Look at these statistics that cloud adoption, alarming 82% of breaches are involving data stored in the cloud. So they're moving to cloud, getting into the cloud. Think about the evolution of ransomware, where it's gone from we're just encrypting your data to we're encrypting your data and we've destroyed your backup, or we've encrypted the backup, to now we're just going to take your data. We don't care about encrypting it, because the bad guys are always doing what's easiest. We're going to encrypt your data, and now the trend is we're not going to encrypt your data. We're not going to just take your data. We're going to come in and we're going to change your data. So how do you know you can trust your data? We talk about the security triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. How do you know that your data has integrity? So you have to take the measures to ensure you have immutability in your backups. Your backups are unavailable to anyone. So now you know you have that covered. But that's another area of ransomware that's coming, okay? The copies are created and transferred between clouds. That's where things can get hidden, where I lose track of where things are going, okay? It's hidden from the teams, just moving back and forth. We lose access. And then the shadow data exposes the organizations to data security. So it's almost like the rogue IT of the last 20 years where people were going out and using credit cards to, oh, I can do this. A marketing organization can do that. Now the movement of data, we get lost. We talk about being data keepers. It's like, where is it? How did it get out there? And what's the next brave new world in this? It's AI. AI is the rogue IT of the 21st century and beyond because the data is getting out there. So responsible use, another thing. So here's another interesting Center for Internet Security. That just says it right there. You cannot defend what you don't know you have, right? See, our auditor's just like going, is like the dog in the back of the Chevy right there, just up and down. She's getting it. Totally. All right, so discover the sensitive data all across your assets. Prioritize that protection. Who thinks in security that you can protect everything? Okay, good. For those of you who really feel that way, we have a therapy session starting at 2 o'clock next door, because can't do it, right? Okay? And then it's all about reducing the risk around recovery and compliance. So I highly recommend you look into the idea of the data security posture management. If you're not doing it already, there's just so much value. And the ability now that we have as technology, and something that we're doing, is the ability to reach out through these APIs to the cloud to get that data, bring it back, and to display the exact value. And this is what we do a lot, with AWS. If I can put a little plug in for Amazon. We started our company with the help of Amazon and AWS. We've built our distributed file system and our logical control plane, everything that we do, with the help of AWS. Couldn't do it without them. Tremendous capability here. And whether you're in bed with Azure or GCP, that's great. And it's not anything against them. It's the ability of what cloud can do for you with the maturity of these systems is remarkable, just absolutely remarkable. So this has been the goal for Cohesity, and why I, as a field CISO, I spent 16 years as the global evangelist for a company formerly known as Symantec. I lived my life traveling around the world, working with organizations. I actually started my career here in Houston with IBM in 1981. So, oh boy, did I date myself. I'm the old guy in the room. But I spent most of my years in cybersecurity. And I came out of retirement to join Cohesity. And this is why. Is because as a company that's known for backup and secondary data and recovery and data protection, this is what we're really doing. Is we're integrating with the security companies to provide the visibility around these spaces: identity and access, threat scanning, XDR, SIM, vulnerabilities, cybersecurity services. And look at some of these names. I mean, these are the leaders in the space, absolute leaders. And now we've added the data security posture management. So all of these DSPM tools are part of our portfolio with the one platform. And that's why I came out of retirement. They called me, said, okay, let's wear his hat. Kevin Mandia, who's the name in cybersecurity, on our board of directors. And he could go anywhere, do anything he wants, basically. And he chose Cohesity. So I want you to think about, what are the 3 things I talked to you about data at the beginning that you have to instill into your organization? How quickly they forget. Culture. Strategy. Come on, there's only one more out there. Operations. Strategy, operations, culture. You got 2 out of 3. You will be in the bonus round today, sir. Thank you for playing. Strategy, operations, and culture. Think about how you can integrate data into the strategy, operation, and culture of your organization. That's where you're going to succeed. Think about the value, break it into the pieces that represent the most important, the dollar bills that are the most important to your organization, and you will be successful in protecting and being ahead of your peers within your organization. Where are we going? Cloud will continue to play a huge role. The devices that are just going everywhere continue to be connected to the internet. AI, I would love to stand here and talk about this, the most exciting and the most terrifying situation that we've ever lived with right here around artificial intelligence. I've been writing a lot of papers about it. It's thrilling and scary at the same time. Wonderful future ahead of us. We're going to figure out what privacy means to us. And lastly, the ethics side and the governance side will always be a question for us. So know your data, know who has access, know what value it is. Treat it like the money, right? It's a what? What? Question? Yeah, he's got it. That's right. He was in the bonus round. Oh, would I give him the $3? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Great to be with you. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day, folks.